Where I'd like to begin is how important it was for you, as well as your collaborators, in achieving this vision that your design reflected light. Because when you're watching this, it's the locations, it's the details, lighting, and the overall color palette in each of those locations, the way the sun illuminates Marquise's office, the pulsing lights in
Mhm.
Osaka Continental. Like, just there's so many things that are going on that I think I could just spend here the remainder of our discussion just kind of going through all those details, but I'm just kind of curious about where
Yeah.
lighting kind of came into your decision making.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we kind of established the lighting, and it kind of grows and morphs into all these films that we've done. We've done four of them now, and working with Dan Louston, the cinematographer, and myself, we've collaborated on several projects. So it's really early on in the early production. We really come up with what we want to do, and we have lots of discussion with just three of us: Chad, Dan, Lawson, and myself. And we'll go. Just the three of us will go to the different locations that we're thinking about. And sometimes these locations aren't really. We don't know what scene they're going to be for.
Mm.
But we just kind of like the Marquis office, for example. That was a location in Berlin, and we had several ideas of what we wanted to kind of do there, but we weren't really, after visiting a couple of times, and we kept going back and trying to decide really what the scene was going to be there. Then we decided to do, the big scene where Sharon gets killed. We kind of, I mean, it all kind of starts there. And then Dan kind of does his ideas of what he wants to light, and we kind of have a shorthand. I mean, we go out to dinner, we talk about it all the time. So it's really a collaboration between the cinematographer, myself, and Chad.
Gotcha, gotcha. Speaking of those
Yeah.
details, like the hall with all the candlelit chandeliers and the art when Kane is pulled in back into the business, as well as any scene in this, like you can feel the history in each of the
Mhm.
locations. You talked about going like these are actual locations, some of these like, but then there's probably some, gray spaces that you have to color in yourself. Can you talk about doing like some cultural dives and research to kind of make that the art and the background is giving informing something, it's giving me something about the
Exactly.
character or the
Exactly.
location, all kinds of things, so I'm just kind of curious about that process.
Yeah, well, we were scouting. We wanted to shoot in Paris, and one of my favorite locations. I've been going to Paris for years now, and is the Opera House. They have probably one of the most beautiful opera houses in the world. And I've taken Chad there a couple times, and I said, Chad, we have to do several scenes here. Um, the Opera House was willing to let us shoot there, and they were kind enough to grace us with us coming there and taking over their little world and turning it into kind of the Marquis playground.
Yeah.
And so that was the top level mezzanine level of the Paris Opera House. Um, and it's really kind of finding spaces like that. Like we picked the Louvre, we picked all these Sacre-Cœur, all these great locations in Paris. And that's one of the things we like to do is when we go to these cities, whether it be Berlin or New York or Paris, is to find the most kind of iconic locations and the most, really to kind of set the stage for why these places are so famous. And if we can bring the John Wick world into reality, because everybody knows the Eiffel Tower and they know all these places, but once you put the John Wick world into these places, it becomes a great juxtaposition of style and look. So that's one thing we really look for and try to strive for.
Mhm. What would you say is the character that was most creatively satisfying, like the most creatively satisfying headspace to be in and reflect that through your design?
Well, I guess the Marquis, right?
Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård's character in this one, only because we had a lot of different ideas of what this. I mean, first we were going to put him at Versailles, and we took him to Versailles, and Chad and I scouted that, and we were going to like make him, almost like Louis the 14th kind of character. So we kind of, it was really kind of fun to kind of dive into the whole French history and that whole world, and trying to find the character in kind of based in maybe some part of French history. So and I've always wanted to shoot in France. I always wanted to shoot in Paris. So it's kind of like, for me personally, that was probably the most fun and most rewarding part of it.
I feel like there's so many decisions that were made in terms of placement of chairs and ladders and things that are going on. So I'm curious about like those personal
Yeah,
touches that you made that may feel that you're personally most proud of.
yeah, exactly. I guess the big we call it the top shot, where Keanu is fighting, all the back end, and the camera kind of goes up above
Right.
like this French apartment building. And that was shot over 2 or 3 different locations, and kind of stitched together into one location in the film. And really kind of how we kind of come across, and how I come across thinking about these sets is to create an obstacle course for our character, and for Chad to kind of, he has to get from point A to point B. And if the more stuff we put in his way, whether it be set dressing or walls or alleyways or corners that kind of come across, the more fun it is. And Chad really kind of and I really kind of talked about what are these obstacle courses, and each set and each action sequence has its own style of obstacle course, and that's kind of where it comes from, is just to create a barrier that our character has to get through. And that's kind of the fun part of it, for me at least.
Yeah, yeah. What about
Yeah,
the underground, like the subway? Because even like the the art that's in the background there, where it's all kind of distorted or the
yeah,
ripped and things like that. Like even that is providing some information and creating some
sure.
curiosity into like the homeless community and the way that they present themselves.
Yeah, I mean, your question a couple of minutes ago was, who was my favorite character and design for in this one. But if you were to ask me this one for John Wick 3 and John Wick 2 for that matter,
Yeah,
it would definitely have been the Bowery King.
yeah,
'Cause I think his world is super fun. And to bring that kind of New York homeless kind of world, I call it homeless, but it's not really homeless. It's like an underground,
sure.
resistance. Um, and to bring that into kind of the Paris kind of world, is kind of really where it stems from, is how can we bring this New York underworld into the Paris underworld. Yeah, sure, ripping up posters and bringing in antiques and creating the original idea of that train station was, it was supposed to be a closed down platform for the Louvre, because in one of the scenes before this, John Wick was coming out of the Louvre or near the Louvre, and he was coming into the station, but I don't think it was really laid out that well in the movie. But so it's kind of like supposed to be like the storage, like the leftover storage um, artwork for the Louvre was kind of like my idea of it.
Yeah.
And, so it's like ideas like that in my head. I just kind of have fun with it and run with it.
Yeah, like I can recognize that hours and hours and hours went into achieving that look, but sometimes they can be over within a second. And but I understand why that needs to happen. But the effect is it's like it creates curiosity, it causes me to lean in, it makes me want more, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes its briefness makes it even cooler. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious if you've ever encountered that challenge of like, man, I wish they would have lingered on it a little bit longer, but I also know that that makes it
Well,
cooler.
that's the story of my life. Living with a director who cuts the scene out too much, or we build a set that never makes it in the movie. But no, I'm fully aware that if a scene only takes place for a minute of screen time, it's immortalized, and so it's I no longer lose sleep over that anymore. I used to, but no, but it's Yeah, like we, Dan, Lauston, myself, and Chad, we always think that, every set, like for people like yourself, people linger on that stuff and people lean into it and people, um, gravitate towards sets like that. And I've always tried to make those sets just as important as the big long sets. So, um, no set is too short or too small for me. So they all require just as much detail and attention.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
Can you talk about the club sequence with the waterfalls, the fire pits, just all the people that are in there? Like, here's a big question: what's the art of creating epic?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was a crazy set. That we Chad always wanted in every one of these films, we come up with one set that we want to, or one element. Like in John Wick 3 was like this glass house or this glass structure that we decided to do on. And this one we wanted to do a water set. And we had all these ideas and concepts I was working on for months. Um, at one point it was supposed to be this underground waterworks throughout Berlin, and it's like this is where the drainage is, and then we said, well, let's just go to this place. There's this club, this famous club in Berlin called Kraftwerk, and it's kind of this art gallery club, and I've kind of known about it, or it's been I've known about it for years. I've always loved this place, so I said, yeah, let's go to this place and let's see if they'd be willing to kind of let us pour 1 million gallons of water into their facility and do a big crazy fight scene. It was right after COVID, and they were kind of, their schedule was wide open. And I met with the owners there, and they were like, yeah, come on in. This place is yours. So, and to me, it was like an honor because it's a great place and it's kind of famous. And if you ever go to Berlin, and you have to go check this place out. And we were able to, with the special effect of all the different departments, the lighting, special effects, construction, we were able to, it was like I don't know how much water we put in that place, but it was unbelievable. It was more than I ever thought of. So, and Chad always wanted more. So it was like,
Hmm.
I didn't have enough waterfalls. So it was like, I had like 60 waterfalls at one point, and Chad wanted more. So, it was just, we were building waterfalls to the day we shot it. So,
Wow.
to me, that was, one of my fun sets of the movie. Um, and just the engineering of it all, and how to get the water in and out and
Yeah.
circulate it and make it look good, and working with Dan, Dan Lauston, trying to light it and figure out the lighting part of it. And then, Chad kind of writes a scene around it. So it starts with just like, let's do a water set. And then it comes down to,
Mm.
well, what happens in the water set, So
Right. Yeah. Giving him the sandbox, and then
giving him, exactly, that's a good way of saying it. Give him the playground to come up with a cool sequence.
yeah.
And an obstacle course, really is what it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, it did look good, so you don't have to worry about that. But
Yeah,
as we close out here, I'm just wondering about like how analytical and you get when you're just out and about in the real world, going to these locations that you're talking about, and you just maybe you're on vacation with family or something like that. Is it annoying for them to be with you, and you're just like, oh, the interiors in here, like what is the
yeah.
history of this place? So I'm just kind of curious
Yeah, I'm
about
always,
that.
snapping pictures of details and moldings and, archways and doorways, and they're all, they're used to it. So, but no, when I'm with my family and when I'm, like during the holidays that are coming up, I'm now be able to kind of a little bit turn off work a little bit and enjoy the people around me. So that's really important to me, is to know, all right, when I get back, especially working with Chad, who's, he's full of energy and full of ideas, and I really have to be with it. I have to keep up with him basically. And in order to do that, I need to recharge my batteries. And so when I go home, when I'm with my family, and when I'm around them on the weekends, it's but part of my brain when I go to bed at night is still spinning. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm able to manage it.